Okay, good morning, everyone. Today we're going to go over elements, as you can see here, elements of expository essay. But just real quick, some housekeeping. Um, if I'm just looking directly at the course outline, hopefully you have a copy of that too in front of you that you keep so you can sort of follow the dates of when things are due. Today we're going over review elements of expository essay with an example. I'll provide a student example that I think is a pretty good example of expository that you can use. And I'll also email that to everyone and post it in Blackboard on the left-hand side under expository essay example. Um, and it says too, we're going to go over review database research methods. We're actually going to do that next week. So look for that on Tuesday and not today. Uh, and quickly, just to review about with regard to our personal essay final drafts, those are due, just looking at the schedule here, Tuesday, 29th, September 29th. Review database research methods and final personal essay due via Blackboard. So I'll send instructions, but it was very similar to how you posted your personal essay rough drafts. So but I'll send out an email with instructions on Tuesday on how to post your final draft to Blackboard, and then we move forward completely into the elements, into the expository essay phase of this semester. And you can start to see how the semester is going to unfold, right? It seems like every month we have a new essay. We started with the personal essay. It was more sort of a simpler sort of construction of an essay where you just give a narration of a past experience. Now we're moving on to an essay that is it requires more research. It's going to look more like an academic university or college level essay. And then we're incrementally move through that in the month of October, and then at the end of the month of October, we're going to move to the argumentative, and at the end of November, we'll move to the research essay. So all essays, all the first three essays, the personal essay, the expository essay, and the argumentative essay, are 3 to 5 pages in length, double spaced, and they are required to adhere to all MLA, Modern Language Association rules. So this week, we're going to look at the expository essay, often called the informative essay, because it does just that. It seeks to inform the reader on any given subject matter. The landscape is completely open with regard to your topic, as long as you're informing the reader on something. You're doing research and you're informing them on that topic. You're borrowing from outside authority. From this point forward, like we do if we construct and craft any essay where we're bringing information in from the outside, we need to reach out to resources out there, whether it's the databases, whether it's websites, whether it's actually books. It's up to you. Journals, journal articles, and we need to borrow from outside authority, right? Not rely upon our own authority, but reach out to outside authority in order to underscore or buttress our thesis statement. In this way, think about expository in terms of exposing the reader to a topic and exploring various facets of that topic. Because of this, unlike the personal essay, so you will have an introductory paragraph that must distill down to a thesis statement. So we didn't have that in the personal essay, right? It doesn't make sense to say within this personal essay, I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z, right? Just it's a story of your past, so you just were telling the story and let it unfold naturally the way that the circumstances unfolded naturally with you in your past. But now it's imperative and even paramount that we include at least the beginning third of the essay, typically at the end of the first paragraph, right? Uh, where we give background information. That's going to become an important aspect, component of the expository essay is in the top third, probably the first paragraph. You give some background information on your topic because we don't take for granted ever that the reader understands the full scope of what you're talking about, right? So if I were to sort of, I don't know, write an informative essay on cancer, a certain type of cancer, say brain cancer, right? I can't sort of assume that the reader knows what brain cancer is. So right away, I'm going to give some background information and I'm going to define what brain cancer is. Then after that, I'm going to allow my first paragraph to distill down to a very precise, very cogent thesis statement that tells the reader directly what this essay is going to be about, what it's going to entail, And maybe even some, I think the best essays, and I would recommend you doing this, is to summarize your main points in great proximity to your thesis statement. So within this essay, we're going to review what brain cancer is, to include the causes, the treatment, and the prognosis. So there we go. I summarized my 3 points that I want to make, 3 or 4 points, up to you. I could have drilled down on one of those points and it would have been able to carry the breadth of a 3 to 5 page double-spaced essay, correct? We'll look at a few examples of expository thesis statements in a moment, but just note, this essay, and I'm underscoring this idea, this essay differs from the personal essay as it will include direct quotes or paraphrases and will have in-text citations, 2 to 3 in fact, which correspond to 2 to 3 entries on a works cited page. So what I want 3, I said 2 to 3 here, I'm reading from an old PowerPoint presentation. We're going to have, it's going to be 3 to 5 pages, double spaced, and we're going to have a minimum of 3 in-text citations that each have to correspond or marry up to 3 entries on your works cited page. So sort of get out of the mode of personal essay, of just your voice being the lone voice on the page, and get into the mode of you borrowing from other experts in the field. I think it's going to become important too, is to, and I would recommend this highly because these are the best essays that do this, is that they not only do they attribute their direct quotes. So if I was to use a direct quote I reached out to the to a database, an academic article that outlined what the symptoms are of brain cancer, if that's my topic of my expository essay, and I borrow from an expert, but I also qualify them. So I give them attribution, which is just saying who they are, according to Dr. Martin Jones, and then I qualify them, a leading cancer or oncologist in the field, or sorry, oncologist in the field of brain cancer, right? So I qualified him. Said, quote, brain cancer is caused by a number of factors to include X, Y, and Z, unquote, right? And then I would give that in-text citation. I already mentioned his name, so maybe I just give the page number if there is one of the article. And then that has to correspond to an entry on the works cited page. All right. Okay, what does an expository essay actually do? And I'm just reading from the slide here. Elements of expository essay. It informs the reader on a chosen subject matter, and that's up to you. If you feel like you're stuck and you can't really decide and whittle it down to an actual topic that you feel interested in, and I'm going to implore you to pick a topic that you're interested in. That's fine. But I would also implore you to jump on the other side of that, to pick a topic that's sort of out of the mainstream waters of your purview of what you understand, right? So you can really gain new knowledge. But if you're interested in a topic, you're going to be more passionate about it, you're going to dig deeper into the research, and that's fine as well. But you're informing the reader on your chosen subject matter. You can reach out to me if you really can't whittle it down to something specific. But one, it can define something. For example, what is social work? That you can write a whole paper that you just explain what social work is. Or two, it can demonstrate a process. How does one become a social worker? Inevitably, if you wrote on the second one, right, how does one become something? You have to define what it is as well, right, in the background information in the beginning of the essay, in the first paragraph. And then you expand on it more, give a greater definition within the body of the essay. And then three, you can compare and contrast social work to something else, to another profession maybe, as we can see here in the example. Social work is different to other occupations, and this is how and why. So what does an expository essay actually do? As you can see here, and as I'm sure you recall from the chapter summary, the expository essay moves in a number of modes. One, it seeks to define something. In this example, if a subject of the essay was social work, the essay could completely dedicate itself to defining what social work is. And then 2 and 3. But I think the best essays sort of adequately, how they sort of adequately meld together all these ideas, 1, 2, and 3, right? They define what social work is, they demonstrate the process of becoming a social worker, and then they compare and contrast social work to other professions. So as I alluded to before, the most effective expository essay will combine all 3 elements. So you may choose to write your expository essay just adhering to one of those three elements: define, process, or compare and contrast. But the most effective expository essay will combine all three or even two of those expository elements. Here's an example of giving a definition or even background information on the essay's topic, which is, as we know, social work. So I'm going to read this aloud for us, but yours doesn't have to be, please don't follow my suit. I'm just using social work as an example. It doesn't have to be what you're majoring in or what your profession is going to be post-graduation from either Medisat College or MRU. I just want to give this, like to give this as an example. Define or give background information. The primary, and this would be sort of closer to the top of the essay, given this background information. It's important, right? The primary mission of the social work profession is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic human needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. A historic and defining feature of social work is the profession's focus on individual well-being in a social context and the well-being of society. And according to social workers' code of ethics, quote, fundamental to social work is attention to the environmental force that create, contribute to, and address problems in living. Social workers promote social justice and social change with and on behalf of clients. And then I end the quote, and then I give the in-text citation, Reamer. And you can see the works cited entry, how Reamer, the in-text citation, corresponds to an entry on my works cited page. So Reamer, comma, Frederick, period. That would be the person that actually gave the quote. And notice too, where I have, and according to Social Workers Code of Ethics, so I set up the quote by giving an attribution of where I got it from, where I got this quote from, and then the quote would actually started with a capital F, but I used the brackets showing that I'm editing it to make it a lowercase f so it melds well to the sentence that I set it up with the attribution. And according to the Social Workers Code of Ethics, quote, fundamental to social work is attention to the environmental forces that create, contribute to, and address problems in living. Also, we absolutely cannot take for granted that our audience, the reader, as I said before, the reader of this essay is privy or understands what exactly social work is. So in this manner, you have to provide background information on any topic that you choose. This could be something as simple as giving us a history lesson on your topic in the form of a paragraph or two. This background information on your subject matter should, in all likelihood, be on the first page of your essay, or I would say the top third of your essay. So that right away, we have a strong footing on the topic. We have a running definition that we can keep and refer back to on what your subject matter actually is defined as. As you can see above, under Works Cited, I pulled this paraphrasing quote from an article written by Frederick Reamer in an online article titled Why Our World Needs Social Workers. This is what the Works Cited entry would actually look like. Notice too that when we actually go to assemble our Works Cited with our three entries that correspond to three in-text citations, that it's going to be alphabetized. So Reamer falls late in the alphabet, right? So it would be one of the bottom entries on the page. Okay, this was us defining social work. Now let's look at what the process would look like. So here we have the process, or how one can become a social worker. I'll just read it aloud. Process. According to alberta.ca, social workers must have a diploma, bachelor's degree, or master's degree in social work. Some employers require a minimum of a bachelor's of social work, BSW degree. Other requirements may include a criminal record check, child welfare intervention record check, and valid driver's license and the use of a vehicle. And then I give that's just all paraphrasing from an article I read, right? An article from alberta.ca. And then I give the attribution, or sorry, I give the in-text citation, social worker. And you can see my in-text citation at the end, because I couldn't find an author for this paraphrase that I used. I still wanted to incorporate this quote into my expository essay. So you have to instead use the title of the article in quotation marks. So anytime, and this happens a lot, and I'm reiterating this because it's important, because I'm going to get papers that aren't going to in-text citation correctly and have it correspond correctly to entry on your works cited page. If I want to have a quote, especially on government websites like alberta.ca or canada.ca or Stats Canada, it's going to be few and far between that you actually find a person's name who's attributed to to writing this article or these statistics, compiling these statistics on Canada.ca. It just, in our day and age, these people work for government agencies. They don't necessarily are going to put their name on a document, even though they had written it. So when that happens, you still have to give in-text citation, right? I just can't put that up there and just let you assume that it was you that made the statement, right? Obviously, this is not you as the author of your own essay making this statement. This isn't your voice. This is you borrowing from someone else. In this case, Alberta.ca. So if you don't have an author, if you can't find someone who actually made the quote or paraphrase, you need to use the title of the article. In this case, I used social worker. The title was probably social worker. We'll get that in a moment. Actually, the original title was social worker in the 20th century. I shortened it to simply social worker. You have to put quotation marks around it too to show that's the title of the article. I want you to do the same. The long title will still be listed on your works cited page. However, notice too that I didn't list the page number in the in-text citation. That's because it was an online article and there simply wasn't a page number listed. That's perfectly fine. Don't make up a page number if there isn't one. Don't make up an author, obviously, if there isn't one. Just use the title of the online article. Don't use the name of the website, right? It wouldn't be alberta.ca in my in-text citation here in these parentheses at the end of this paraphrase, right? I use the title. You must use the title of the article when you cannot find the author. And use quotation marks around the title. And if it's a really long title, like this one was social worker in the 20th century, I shortened it to the first 2 or 3 words. It didn't make sense to shorten it to social worker in the first 3 words, so I just shortened it to the first 2 words, which is fine. Okay, here we can see we are choosing to compare and contrast social work to other occupations, and I'll read it aloud. Compare and contrast. So social work is different to other occupations because those individuals in this field, according to the National Association of Social Workers website, quote, focus both on the person and their environment. And then I give the in-text citation. The article goes on to say how social workers deal with the, quote, external factors that impact a person's situation and outlook. This profession, according to the same article, quote, creates opportunities for assessment and intervention to help clients and communities cope effectively with the reality and change that reality when necessary, unquote. Notice the incorporation of my in-text citations. Like the previous slide, this article did not have an author, so instead, I had to do what MLA tells us, and that is to use the title of the article instead, in quotation marks. In this case, it was Why Choose the Social, which is intentionally shortened as the original title was too long, and it was Why Choose the Social Work Profession. So I shortened it to Why Choose the Social. But on your works cited page, it has to be the full Why Choose the Social Work Profession. Right? Whatever you see in parentheses, or sorry, whatever you list in your in-text citation has to be what we see on your entry on your works cited page. But if you shorten your title in your in-text citation, as I did here, you still have to use the long title on your works cited page. I again want you to do the same as I did. If in your in-text, if you don't have an author, it will contain the title of the article, online or otherwise, and shorten it, like we said before, to 3 words, if it's, say, 5 words long. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so you sit down, you've done some research on whatever topic you've chosen. In my case, social work, the history of social work, defining social work, the background information of social work, and how one becomes the process of becoming a social worker. Right? I've compiled all this great information. I've copy and pasted quotes onto a Word document. I've organized them in a relevant manner, like what I believe is the strongest hierarchy. So my strongest point first, probably define, my second point, what it is, or sorry, the process. Then my third point, comparing and contrasting it to other professions, right? I would compare and contrast it to the other professions of what they do for a living, their salary, what they make for a living compared to other professions, maybe similar professions or their salary, so you can pick and choose what you wish. But again, I'm reiterating, please don't pick social worker necessarily. Don't pick what you're studying. It doesn't have to be that. Doesn't have to be the profession that you want to be. Choose something, anything else, okay? So you sat down, you've compiled all these great quotes, you've compiled all this information, that you want to go into your 3 to 5 page double-spaced essay with 3 in-text citations that correspond to 3 entries on your works cited page. Now your duty is to whittle all that information down into a thesis statement that's going to be probably at the end of your first paragraph. So here's a sample thesis statement I came up with on the topic of the profession of social work. And I'm direct, and you could be just as direct. Within this essay, and important too, I get this question every semester. Yes, you can use I. You can address the I and speak in a strong voice as you, as I, right? Other classes, in English class, they used to be you have to use one, right? One becomes a social worker. It's sort of antiquated nowadays. You can use one if you wish, that's fine. But you can use I as well, especially in an English class. Feel free to do so. Every instructor is different, but definitely in the other classes that you're going to take, the science-based ones, they prefer you using the cold, more distant pronoun of one, right? But within this, here's my thesis statement. Within this essay, I will explore the required steps needed to become a social worker, to include interest, natural predilection, education, certification, and licensing. And as I say here, you could be the partial source of expertise. However, the majority of the expertise will come from an outside authority, which we covered before. So here I go. I tell you directly what this essay is going to be about, how to become a social worker, and I give you a summary of what I'm actually going to explore within this essay. One has to have the interest, the natural predilection, I'm going to expand on that, the education, the certification, and the licensing. And a stellar essay will springboard right into the body of your essay and follow this summary exactly as it unfolds in my thesis statement. So I would start with interest. In order to become a social worker, one must first have an interest in the field of social work, right? And then my second point, I would just follow my summary. And then talk about natural predilections. A person should naturally have empathy for other individuals and sympathy for people who are in situations of poverty and minorities in society and pariahs of society, right? And then I would speak about the education aspect. And then I would speak about once you get the education, the 4-year degree or the master's degree, then you have to keep up your licensure and your certification, right? So I would talk about that as well. If you recall from the chapter summary on expository essay, and this is highly important, as you can see here, warning, this is going to come down to language, guys, and it's important. There are going to be a good amount of you that are going to get this correctly, but there's going to be some individuals that are going to struggle with the idea of interjecting superlatives and adjectives and qualifying language within your essay, which you can't. We cannot do that. We don't want to qualify anything that makes it seem as if it's persuasive. So expository essay must not, no matter what, attempt to persuade the reader or argument on behalf of the subject matter. It only informs. So going back to the original topic of social work, it would never be part of your thesis statement. Something along this line. Within this essay, I'm going to explore how great the process is in becoming a social worker and how wonderful these individuals are in society in treating the underprivileged and under sort of the hoi polloi of society, right? The unwashed masses. So I really qualified, and you can see the language of me saying, great and wonderful. I'm really qualifying and giving language that is very loaded and trying to persuade the reader because it's loaded, because I'm qualifying, adding qualifying language. So we have to avoid that, right? So second point here, sometimes avoiding persuasion reduces down to how we use language and seek balance within an essay. Think of a journalistic article in a newspaper. The articles within a newspaper, typically I say, are objective. They have no bias towards anything. They have no dog in the fight. They don't want to persuade you. They just want to tell you that an accident happened on October 15th in downtown Medicine Hat 2 years ago, right? That's all they want to do is give you the facts, right? They don't want to tell you it was horrific and it was crazy and there was mayhem and I was there to see it as the reporter, right? So yeah, you want to avoid all the qualifying language. You want to avoid any opinion whatsoever. Let's see. Let's look at 2 examples of thesis statements. One persuasive, this is the one we have to avoid, and the other expository, this is the one that we want to stick to, right? I think it should be noted too. We'll take a look at this in a moment. The persuasive thesis statement or argumentative versus the expository or informative. So I say before that it comes down to language sometimes. Unbiased. It needs to be objective, not subjective language, right? Be more like a journalistic article instead of um, editorializing. If you don't want to editorialize, you do not want to offer your opinion. So sometimes it comes down to, I've seen papers where they turn right from the get-go, right from the very beginning of the paper, the title of the paper, you could see that they're attempting, not intentionally, uh, not they're not probably cognizant that they're trying to persuade, but right when we read the title, you can see there's a level of persuasion already, and this boils down to language. So if one were to say uh, the bad or the title of the article or the essay would be this: the negative effects of LSD on the human brain. Right? Well, that's great for a persuasive uh, essay, right? You're trying to persuade the reader that there are effects that LSD has, and they are all negative, right? So I would tell this individual just take out the negative, right? That's language that's qualifying the effects. Take that out. Make it more neutral, unbiased, right? Make it objective, and you would just take out negative, and then the title of the essay would be the effects of LSD on the human brain. Great. And then within the essay, you can compare and contrast the negative to the positive. That's fine. That's a balanced essay, right? That would be journalistically a balanced article. You're mentioning the positive effects of LSD, and you're mentioning the negative effects. So in that way, you're staying balanced, and it's not attempting in any way, shape, or form to persuade the reader. So remember that. Just I, it might boil down to you just using the word effects on your topic if it comes down to seemingly that you're persuading. Okay, so persuasive, just looking at the slide here, or argumentative thesis statement. Canada is a wonderful place to live due to the relatively low population, the expansive land, and robust economy. All right, so we get the word wonderful that I emboldened here. That really tells us that this is great. Canada's great, and I'm going to tell you why it's great, right? So highly biased, right? Really wanting to persuade you that Canada is, a great place, and this is why, X, Y, and Z, right? But the expository, the more neutral thesis statement would say this: Canada has a relatively low population, expansive land, and a robust economy compared to other North American countries. So what I'm doing here, I'm taking out the qualifying language, wonderful. I am mentioning the same points, um, but I'm not qualifying them in any way. And then I'm comparing it to North America. So I'm comparing and contrasting. I'm mentioning similar countries, right? And or it could be dissimilar or disparate ones. That's fine too, right? I could have compared Canada to China, to communist China, right? We're a democracy, a republican democracy, and China is communist ruling. So you can do that as well. They could be disparate. They don't have to be similar like North America and Canada are. But if you take out the qualifying language, then your statements that sit on your page are really going to be stronger in terms of just informing the reader. Let them draw their own conclusions. You've given them this information, let them draw their own conclusions if it's good, bad, or ugly. Speaking of comparing and contrasting, one of those ways we can approach writing an informative essay. Let's compare and contrast argumentative versus expository. So argumentative, point number one, it chooses a position for or against something. We're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to do what's under first box under expository. It explores many angles of a topic in a neutral way. And the second one under argumentative may be written in first person. That's fine. We could write ours in first person, but in the expository is usually written in third person. So argumentative, the thesis statement presents the writer's argument, right? We're not going to do that. But under expository, what we are going to do, the thesis statement presents the writer's topic, right? Our topic, and then summarize your points that you're going to make. We spoke about this before. Argumentative is subjective, so it's your personal opinion, but expository is objective. These are truths. You're going out there doing research and finding truths on a subject matter, and they're presenting them in a neutral way to the reader. And that boils down to language, as we said before. So words to avoid because they tend to persuade would be qualifying language: wonderful, great, good, ideal, terrific, exceptional, awesome. Some of these are over the top. You could definitely see I would never use exceptional or awesome within my essay. Um, but you can see some that are seemingly almost expository. They're almost neutral, like ideal, right? Uh, so if I were to stick with the social worker topic of an expository essay, it's ideal for social workers to not only get a BSW in social work, but also a master's of social work, what's called an MSW. It doesn't sound like it's persuasive, but it's telling the reader that it's better. It's ideal, right? If you unpack that word, it means better. It means it's a synonym for good or great, right? And better. Uh, so therefore, it is persuading the reader that, oh, I'm gonna not only get a BSW. I'm not only if I ever meet anybody that wants to become a social worker, I'm gonna definitely tell them it's better if you get not only a BSW in social work but an MSW, right? And that's what we can't do. Any word that seeks to qualify the subject matter you are choosing to write your essay on is words that you need to avoid. In this way, our expository essay is you're sort of a journalist. Think of yourself as a reporter for a news magazine or organization that has no political slant or dog in any fight. You simply want to supply the facts to the reader without obscuring the facts with your own opinion. I can't stress this enough that the expository essay must be objective and that you're simply providing the facts absent of your opinion or your belief systems. And it's harder than you think. And I think hopefully the workshop, when we enter the workshop, when you upload your rough drafts, everybody has that time, that window to go in for 2 days, to go in there and read you're going to assign 4 randomly assigned essays, student essay rough drafts. And then you'll be able to parse from the essay the times that you believe that you can see qualifying language, and we can sort of help each other through peer review stabilize and neutralize that qualifying language. One final thing to think about when you actually sit down to craft your expository essay rough draft will be the concept, as we can see here, of scope. Simply put, scope is how pervasive or large of a landscape you want to explore through your chosen subject matter or topic. So with the social worker example, am I going to write an essay where I simply talk about how many social workers are in Canada and how they become a social worker, or am I going to explore how many are in Western Canada? So I'm narrowing down my scope. Or am I going to find facts that support the amount of social workers in Alberta? So I'm narrowing it down even more to just the province. Or even more specifically, even a smaller scope, how many social workers are in the city of Medicine Hat? Just think about how deep you want to drill down on your chosen topic. You could dig deep on many topics within your subject matter, or you could choose instead to dig wide on the topic within your subject matter. Deep would be to maybe mention, I would mention how do you become a qualified social worker in all of Canada. One of my points would be that, and then I would choose Western Canada then as another point, my second point, and then I would choose Alberta, my third point. My fourth point would be how you become one, and I'm comparing and contrasting all these things too, and defining the process, and then really allowing the individual essay to show and demonstrate all of Canada ultimately. Um, just think about how deep you want to drill down on these topics. It's how thorough you want to be. You could easily write an essay just talking about the city of Medicine Hat. How does one become a social worker in the city of Medicine Hat? Whatever your subject matter is, please, again, I'm reiterating, I'm underscoring this idea. You don't have to choose, and I don't want you to choose necessarily your profession that you want to go into via going to Medicine Hat College. You can, that's fine. I don't want you to. I see too often that people, because I give a lecture on social work, that there's, oh, I should probably do that too. Explore other avenues if you wish. You can do your profession, but don't think that I'm trying to persuade you, because we're not persuading, right? We're informing. Okay, questions. As always, please feel free to email me anytime if you have any questions or concerns. And I simultaneously am sending this link out in email form, and it'll have a sample, an exemplary example of an expository essay. And I'll simultaneously post at the Blackboard too on the left-hand side under a folder that says expository essay example. So this student wrote this essay a few semesters ago on various types of MMA fighting, right? I believe, yeah. So it's really good. He's very informative. That's why it's good, because it's very informative. He really explores the topic thoroughly, presents us and defines for us what MMA is, tells us what this essay is going to be about, gives us examples, pulls quotes and paraphrases from, and has 3 in-text citations that correspond to 3 works cited entries. Please read the essay. It's very important. It's completely MLA sound, so follow the MLA that he incorporates. It's double spaced. It's got the page number top right with your last name, his last name. I just put student's last name, right? Because I took out his name. The page number advances. The in-text citations are correct, where the punctuation comes after the in-text citation. If he found a quote that he wanted to use and he couldn't find an author's last name, he used the title of the article and he shortened that to say the first 2 or 3 words, but he created the full title, put the full title in the entry on the works cited page. Notice too how his in-text citations marry up directly to what is on the works cited page, the entry of the works cited page. Look at those, because I'm going to look at yours. That's part of your grade, is you getting the MLA correct, and that means getting the works cited page correct. He made one mistake in the essay, and that's the word popular. He used the word popular, right? So I forget what he actually said, but so we can't use qualifying language such as popular, right? So I would have said to him, this is part of your grade. You getting a couple points gigged against you because you used the word popular, and otherwise you did great. So look for that word, look for qualifying language, avoid it in your own expository essay writing. So just looking here in the 3rd bullet point, next class we'll explore Medicine College's library links to various databases. Important too, your final personal essay is due by midnight on September 29th, so next class via Blackboard. I'll send instructions on how to do that. And let's see, yep, that's on the 29th. And then October 1st, your expository essay rough drafts are due via Blackboard. And then would have moved on completely to expository essay. The great experiment, online learning, distant learning continues. I wish everybody luck. Email me if you have any questions or concerns. Please read the expository essay example that I'm emailing you with this link and posting to Blackboard.